Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our technical talks. Today we have the workshop number 22, titled Exploration Trends and Opportunities in Colombia, and it's going to be given by Dr. Carlos Maserali. Also, we have the presence of the group of MinCiencias in representation of Carolina Munera, and we will talk after Dr. Maserali's talk. Carolina is going to give you a briefing of the Convocatoria MinCiencias Financiación Jóvenes Investigadores. Okay. Well, we are just in the middle of the month, July, and so we have two more presentations this month. On next week, on July 22nd, we will have a special guest, Dr. Alberto Garcia, and that works for Drummond Company Incorporation, and he's going to talk to us regarding exploration in natural fracture reservoirs in the Cesar Rancheria Basin, Colombia. And as the last talk on July 29, we will have also a special guest, Dr. Luis Ernesto Ardila. He is going to talk to us about the exploration effort on August 5th, we will have a special guest, Dr. Alejandro Mora. And Dr. Alejandro Mora is going to talk about reconstruction of the evolution and infill of the Pliocene to early Pleistocene to Ara, San Juan de Acostas Incline, northern San Jacinto Fall Bell, Northwest Colombia. We'll have a couple of presentations on August 12th from ARES and from the UPTC regarding the understanding and quantify reservoir heterogeneities using digital outcrop models by Mauricio Vaquero and Germán Bayona. And also we will have the talk titled Sedimentological Aspects of the Lizama Formation Application into the Oil Industry by Dr. Medardo Chacon. On August 19th, we will have the geological survey here with the project called Study of the Cretaceous Salt Rocks Interval in the Middle Magdalena Valley. And on August 26th, we will have another talk on gas. We will talk to you about the progress in the identification of prospective areas along gas prospective play fairways in Colombia. Okay, it's a pleasure for us to tell you that we have completed today. I mean, you see on the screen just the summary of the number of attendees historically this year in this Friday talks. As you see in green, you see the national attendees. In yellow, the international attendees, and in purple, you see the number of operators, company operators attending this talk. I mean, we have here in the first slide the number of attendees in February, March, April, May, and in the second slide, the group attending June and July. So for the ANH, it's really a pleasure to say that we have today is our workshop number 50 between 2021 and 2022. That's really a pleasure for us. And the average, I mean, as you can see here on the screen, I mean, we have this average of people attending weekly or talks. I mean, we have 109 national attendees in our talks, 25 international attendees, and 23 operators by week. So it is really a pleasure for the ANH to have that kind of people talking to us every week. I mean, don't forget that we have here this year, this map with areas identified of interest to be nominated. So for gas or for gas associated, so or heavy oil, I mean, we have 30 of those areas are already in our website. This is the address, the link where you can address that information in our website. So I leave just the slide a little bit there, but don't hesitate. We can repeat that and that link on our chat, so you can access that information anytime. So let me just say, for us, it's a pleasure to have Dr. Carlos Maserali with us. Dr. Carlos Maserali, thank you very much. Dr. Maserali has over 35 years of experience in the oil and gas industry. He's currently the managing director of Andes Energy Consulting. Prior to that, he was the director of exploration and development of Tech Petrol, where he was involved in a successful development of the Baccamuerta play in Argentina, as well as in several discoveries in the Llanos Basin in Colombia. Prior to that, he was the worldwide director of geology for Repsol, conducting with his group the technical aspects that lead to the discovery of over 1 billion barrels of oil equivalent in many basins around the world. From 1999 to 25, he was the VP of exploration of new business for coal, and prior to that, he had several senior exploration positions with Shell, both in USA and Netherlands. He has a geology degree from the National University of de La Plata, Argentina, and a master's and a PhD from the Ohio State University in the States. He is the founder of the Journal of South American Earth Science, has over 40 international scientific publications, and has been guest lecturer in many international forums. We have also the pleasure to have Dr. Carolina Munera with us from the MinCiencias. She is an industrial microbiologist graduated from the Pontificia Universidad Javeriana with a specialization in administration and quality system management. She has more than 10 years of experience in the science, technology, and innovation sector with focus into the formulation and research project management, design, development, and implementation in CTR mechanisms. She has a worldwide experience in the construction of alliances through the special cooperation agreements. Currently, she is part of the team of professionals of the Dirección de Vocaciones y Formación del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación in the Science Ministry. Okay, don't forget that next week we will have the workshop number 23, Exploration in Natural Fracture Reservoirs in the Rancheria Basin, given by Dr. Alberto Garcia, Drummond Company Incorporation. An interesting talk. I mean, first time that we're going to talk about natural fracture reservoirs in Colombia and production from them. And finally, in my introduction, I would like to mention that don't forget that the agency is organizing the Pacific Workshop July 29, and that's going to take place here in the auditorium of the ANH, and we are going to have a very interesting group of scientists with us. I mean, from the Geological Survey, from National University, Universidad de Caldas, Armada Nacional, Universidad Tecnológica del Chocó, PGS, and the ANH experts here. So we will have the entire day here with us, and you can be with us here in person, or you can maybe join us virtually. I mean, we will provide you the corresponding link for that. Okay, so thank you very much for being with us today, and I would like to invite Dr. Maserali for this interesting talk.
Do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Dr. Diarma, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm very grateful to the ANH for the opportunity to make this talk. When I was invited to do this several weeks ago, I thought that this would be a great opportunity to share and summarize the tremendous success that exploration in Colombia that had in the last 10 years or so. In doing that, I'm going to review all the major basins, major discoveries. In some of these basins, I have worked personally, so I'm more familiar. In other ones, I'm borrowing from the literature, some of the previous ANH presentations. And all the information that I'm showing here is public information, so there is no confidential information. On the first, let me see if I move. Oh, yeah. On the first slide, I would like to start with a creaming curve of Colombia. That means the number of hydrocarbons that are discovered through time. And it's sort of a memory lane somehow. And I remember around the year 2002 or so, 2003, when I was in Colombia, and we explorers were a little bit concerned, because at that time, the biggest discovery had been in the year 2000, the Wando field. And after that, really, there had been no major discoveries. At that time, the ANH was created. And what you can see here is that since the creation, creation of the ANH to today, there has been 4.7 billion barrels of oil discovery. From my point of view, this shows a tremendous degree of leadership and foresight that this agency managed to bring forward to Colombia. We see that from the year 2010 up to 2014, more or less, there was a steady increase in the discovery of hydrocarbons, and then from the year 2014 onwards, this trend flattened. In this study, I'm going to concentrate from the year 2010 and 2000 to the present day. And I want to dig a little bit deeper into this. And here what I'm plotting is in yellow are the number of wells drilled per year. And in here we see that the maximum number of wells were drilled in the year 2012. The green line is the number of discoveries. And there is not rocket science. The more you drill, the more you discover. And actually it's quite interesting, how well these two, the wells and the number of discoveries fit to each other. But unfortunately, sometimes, after going through this trend, more drilling, more wells, more discovery, that some of the activities controlled not by internal regulations and incentives, but the actual external factors. In this case, the drop in the oil price, a dramatic drop in oil price after 2014, 15, then had, of course, an impact in Colombia, as well as the COVID pandemic, where there was a total, major decrease in the activity. Now, in the year 2022, this year, we see a new trend of drilling, and hopefully, this is going to be followed by the new trend of discoveries. If we look at the number of discoveries, this is a summary of all the discoveries that were done in the last 12 years that are greater than 15 million barrels of oil. And as you can see, the area where the most discoveries were made are in the Llanos Basin. The largest discovery that is actually a field extension, which I'm going to talk a bit later, is the Capacious field, followed by Quifa, Yacana, etc. But there are also important discoveries in the Middle Magdalena Basin and in the Lower Magdalena Basin and in the Putumayo. I am excluding the offshore, which I'm going to treat separately. If we plot all these discoveries from 2010 to 2022, we see that there is by the type of hydrocarbons discovered, we see that there is a very clear clustering of hydrocarbon types with the areas. Then in the offshore, as well as in the Lower Magdalena Basin, as you can see here, the red dots are mostly all gas discoveries. When you go to the Middle Magdalena Basin, the discoveries have been mostly oil and condensate and oil and gas. And then we have one well here in blue that is an unconventional well. Now in the Llanos, most of the wells are oil discoveries. There are several oil and gas discoveries, a few gas discoveries. And to the south, an important area with this outside the Llano, no? But an important area with heavy oil. So it's very well clustered. If we look at the numbers per basin, and this is what we have in this slide here, I mean, what I'm summarizing the number of reserves that were discovered per basin. And in here, we see that the Llanos Basin is the one that has the most discoveries with oil and a little bit of gas, followed by the offshore. In the Llanos, there are 1.6 billion barrels of oil discovered and 550 BCF. And in the offshore, 7.7 BCF and 8 million barrels of oil. But of course, there are important discoveries in the Middle Magdalena, a total of 204 million barrels of oil, and in the Upper Magdalena Basin, 32 million barrels of oil. Now what I'm going to do is, well, this is the ranking on the right side, so you can see how the Llanos stands up against the other basins. But of course, the offshore has quite a bit of interest, especially with this energy transition. To be able to bring gas reserve to the country is extremely important. So a total of 3.5 billion barrels were discovered then in the last 12 years. You know, tremendous number, tremendous success for the country. So I will start describing, going from the offshore finally towards the Llanos, the different basins and some of the main plays that are actually working or have worked in these areas. The first area is the offshore. In here, there are several wells, important wells that were drilled in the last few years. We have the Calasú, the Kronos, and Gorgon, which resulted in a major discovery, and the Orca field to the north that had the discovery, but is probably not economic. Today, as we speak, there are two wells being drilled, one the Uchuba to the north, that is, I haven't seen in detail the data, but I'm convinced that it's more of a stratigraphic trap, drilled by Petrobras and Repsol, and Ecopetrol, sorry. And to the south is the Gorgon 2 well drilled by Shell and Ecopetrol. And I understand that the well has already TD'd, but the results have not been announced. And in here to the right, we see the importance of the different discoveries, with Gorgon in close to 760 CF of gas, which is a huge resource. In here, I have a cross-section of the Gorgon discovery. And as you can see, is at the front of the accretionary wedge of the Sino deformation front. And below, I have a seismic line, and you can see a clear amplitude anomaly underneath this, in the footwall of this truss, and around 60 CF found here. The Gorgon 2 well will, of course, add confirmation. Will be bigger or smaller, hopefully bigger, the accumulation. So, you know, very much looking forward to hear the results of this appraisal campaign. But, you know, I couldn't resist the temptation to look for an analog of this. And the analog that I remember and I put in here is in the Rovuma Basin in Mozambique, where again, at the front of an accretionary wedge, like here, we have the super giant Mamba field discovered by Eni with 80 TCF, tremendous field. And behind that, now in one of the horses of the accretionary prism, the Windjammer field, also multiple TCF sizable field found by Anadarko. So the geological similarity to me is quite striking, and I hope that we can verify, if not, to reach the 80 TCF, I hope that we can continue increasing the numbers of hydrocarbons discovered in this area. Now, moving into the shore, in the northern part of Colombia, we have the lower Magdalena Basin. And also in the last 12 years, there have been important discoveries. They are a bit more modest in size, but they're important because they bring a resource, which is gas, to the area that can be directly monetized and is of prime importance in the development of the northwest portion of Colombia. One discovery is the Bonga field by Jocol, and the other ones are a series of fields. Most of them have some kind of an instrument, clarinete, pandereta, etc. All they have a field instrument names discovered by Canacol. And I'm showing here a couple of a little bit more information. All these discoveries, most of them are in the Ciénaga de Oro formation. These are turbiditic sands, gas bearing, good reservoir. They are well defined with the seismic. And as you can see here, this is all public information from Canacol. They have a series of fields. Some of them now have been drilled. And these fields are now being put on production, and the gas is being commercialized in the northern part of Colombia. So a very important discovery for the northern part of Colombia, for the country, and for the northern part of Colombia in particular. In the middle of Magdalena Valley, there are two kinds of resources. On the one hand, you have the conventional resources, and on the other hand, you have the promise of the unconventional resources. On the conventional side, the two largest discoveries, both made by Gran Tierra, are the Ayombero and Acordeonero fields. The Agencia field is an anticline where that targeted the La Luna formation. So these are fractured limestones and cherts that, like many of these fractured reservoirs, at the beginning they had a very good production and then declined. And now I understand that the field is in observation. On the other hand, the Cordinero field is a major success. It's a field that is currently on production and is one of the main producers in the Middle Magdalena Basin. And this stratigraphic trap, a truncation trap below the Eocene unconformity, where the Lizama reservoir sandstones are actually truncated against the unconformity. In this slide, this information that I see that the Lizama is actually ending in a fault. In other presentation, I've seen that the Lizama goes all the way to the unconformity. So I'm sure that I'm not very clear, if it is actually truncated by the unconformity, but whichever the case, this field is delivering very well and is being developed as we speak, and it's a major discovery, and it's a plate concept that is working really well in the Middle Magdalena Basin. The other element that is present in the Middle Magdalena Basin is the unconventional potential. And all of this is related to the famous La Luna formation of Turonian, Coniacian to Turonian to Santonian age. At that time, there were some shales that were deposited on North and South America and in Venezuela, as well as on the flank of the northern South America in Colombia and extending to Ecuador, that were very organic rich. And as shown in this little cartoon, they were the result of paleo upwelling. Could be coastal upwelling or equatorial upwelling. Equatorial in the case of the northern part, and coastal upwelling, mostly in this north-south related coast. And this generated a very high productivity and also the conditions for the preservation of a high amount of organic carbon. I'm showing a slide microsection for La Luna, in this case from the Táchira area in Venezuela, and showing a very high TOC. And in general, the La Luna has been reported to have TOC ranging from 0.3 to up to 12.5%. So very, very rich. We see here the location of the Middle Magdalena and the Maracaibo Basin. Now, in this section, again, here we have the Maracaibo Basin, the Catatumbo, and the Middle Magdalena. Remember, here we have the La Luna Sea continuing. And this is a cross-section shown here from A to A prime, that goes across the basin. And this is very interesting because it shows how the basin is working, is raising up to the Cordillera Central and deepening towards the Eastern Cordillera. This is due to the presence of a very thick post-Eocene sequence unconformably deposited on top of the Cretaceous that was already deformed. If you're looking for unconventional reservoirs, your idea is to go to flat areas, not to the deformed areas where the present fields are. So these are the areas where you would concentrate, not in the areas where the deformation is actually present. And this is an important consideration because in some of the environmental discussions on the development of these unconventional resources in the Middle Magdalena, some people are concerned that drilling wells where fields are already existing may probably jeopardize the integrity of all existing wells. But in reality, all the unconventional resources, they're not going to be drilling in the deformed area where you have fractured rocks, but you're going to have to develop them in the flatter areas away from the fields, where you're going to artificially fracture the rocks with hydraulic situation. If we look at the maturity zones of the La Luna in the Middle Magdalena Basin, there are three zones. One where the La Luna is immature, another one where La Luna is mature for oil, and then to the east a zone which is the deeper part of the basin. Remember that deepens from the northwest to the southeast. Here, where it's deeper, you have a gas zone. There are a few wells, very few wells that have been drilled in the past, like Mono Araña, Pico Plata, and Manatí Blanco, by companies like Exxon, ConocoPhillips, Shell. However, all these wells were vertical. We know now that to develop and fully appraise an unconventional resource, you need to drill horizontal wells and have multi-stage fractures. Today, this has not been done. There is currently ongoing a very important project that is called PPII, or Plan Piloto de Investigación Integral, where Ecopetrol together with Exxon, they want to drill two wells, the Cale and Platero well, that are located in this area, in the southern part of the area. And these wells will be horizontal, and they will actually test the potential for the first time of the unconventional resources in Colombia. This is extremely important to show the potential, begin to unlock the potential that you have here. And the resources for the area are difficult to estimate because we don't have too much data on actually fracturing the rock and productivity. But according to the Energy Agency of the US, they believe that there are 4.7 billion barrels of oil and 18 TCF. A work by Mora et al. 2018, he thinks that it's almost twice as much the resources, with 8.2 billion barrels of oil and almost 25 TCF. And there is a recent work by Vega et al. 2022 that is much more conservative and thinks about close to 3 billion barrels. However, all these are estimates that need to be tested, but whichever is the case, it has a tremendous impact in the country. Just with the productivity from this area, you can produce enough oil for Colombia for 8.7 years and 10.4 years of gas. So it's very, very important that the country eventually gets to test these projects. I just want to briefly show what could be. This is a summary from Argentina, where I had the luck to participate in some of these developments. And this is the Neuquén Basin of Argentina, located on the western part of Argentina, in here, and the triangular shape. And here we see three zones: an oil zone, a gas and condensate window, and a gas window further to the west. And in the black dots are the Baccamuerta wells that have been drilled. I mean, today there are way over 1,000 wells that have been drilled for Baccamuerta. But the message that I want to send here is that with one well, it's very difficult to test the actual potential of the resource. And if we look at the learning curve in Argentina, we see that the first wells, let's see for oil, they had productivities in the order of 300 barrels a day. And today, this is 2019. Today, the initial production rate goes to over 1,000 barrels a day. So, I mean, and this is much more evident for the gas when we had very low initial productivities. Today, in the 14 de Piedra block, Tecpetrol is drilling wells with production of 35 million cubic feet a day per well. So the potential is dramatic. And what I want to show that there is a learning curve that is important. So the first wells most likely are not going to be the best wells. This is the history of production in Baccamuerta. I'm not going to go through all the detail. I just want to say that the quote-unquote announcement of Baccamuerta took place around 2011. At that time, there was almost no production. And then as the concept began to be developed, understanding the rocks, the different landing zones, and until finally it became what is called the factory mode. That means where you develop the resource more like in an industrial approach, more than a traditional E&P approach. And that's when you see ramp-ups like this one. This is the case of the 14 de Piedra block in Argentina. I had the luck of participating in this project. And in this case, Tecpetrol went from zero production to being the largest gas field in Argentina in a matter of only a year and a half. The present day production of Baccamuerta in Argentina is 221,000 barrels of oil per day and 1.8 BCF per day. Just for comparison, the total Colombian gas production is 1 BCF per day. So what I want to say is not how great is Baccamuerta, but I want to say how great La Luna could be, because La Luna is actually has better quality than Baccamuerta. Now I move to the Eastern Cordillera of Colombia, and here the geology is very complex. We have, we're in the middle of the Andes. This has been uplifted. And here there were two discoveries in the last 12 years, very much located next to each other. Production mostly from the Cretaceous, a little bit from the lower tertiary, but mostly from the Cretaceous. Is oil and gas from the Corrales and Bolivar fields. These are in part anticlines, and in part they are subthrusts. And in the case of the Bolivar, is clearly a faulted anticline. So there is activity going on. There are other companies exploring to the north. So hopefully there will be more discoveries extending this trend in the next few years. We move to the Budamachio Basin, and here there have been several smaller discoveries, but the largest ones are the Moqueta, Siriri, and Cumplidor. Siriri and Moqueta drilled by Gran Tierra again. And the one that I'm very intrigued is the Moqueta discovery, because this is the first time that the field is just next to the mountain front. And I'm showing this from the literature from a work by Carlos Ramirez. And here you see clearly the Cretaceous turning here in this anticline, and underneath, well, at least here underneath some basement or older rocks. And so this is really exploring the edge of the basin towards the mountain front. And I think it's opening a new potential for the area. The Siriri field is also producing mostly from the Cretaceous. And this is basically what I have for Putumayo. So in brief, Putumayo has a lot of potential. It's a basin that has been less explored because of different reasons. Sometimes it had been some more difficulties to access the area, but it's one of the less explored basins that still has a lot of potential. Remember that it's just next to the Oriente Basin of Ecuador. So here, I believe that there is a lot of potential to be realized. Now I go to where the major discoveries have taken place in the last 12 years or so. And when you summarize, there are 1.6 billion barrels and 550 BCF found in this basin alone. So it's really an extremely prolific basin. And I'm summarizing here which are the main plays that have been working in the last years. On the one hand is the Cretaceous play. So I'm going to first talk about the Cretaceous play, and there are many fields that are beginning to produce in the Cretaceous in the area. There are some field extensions. And then again, we have the heavy oil fields that were discovered with Rubiales, and the extension of that play concept a little bit much better defined now in the southeastern portion of the basin. Now, if you look at the distribution of the Cretaceous play, modified from a study by Landmark and Halliburton in 2006, this is the extension of the Une or Ubaque formation into the basin. To me, it's very remarkable the sort of coincidence of this extension with the present day location of the Meta River. And then the Guadalupe, and I don't have here the Gacheta, but really extends a bit further. So basically, at the edge of these extensions of the Une and Guadalupe, etc., there are several stratigraphic traps that there still need to be understood and to be explored. Now, there are very large discoveries like Yacana, Tigana, that they have a component of structural, but also a component of Cretaceous stratigraphic rocks. In the case of Indigo, it's a purely structural discovery in the Cretaceous, but it's extremely prolific field. It produces over 5,000 barrels a day initial production, so it's an excellent reservoir. In the case of Acacias, again, production mostly from the Cretaceous is I will show that later, extension from an existing field, and Castilla, Chichimena, of course, Cretaceous. And then I will talk about Capacious a little bit later. Canyon Limon, of course, is a much older discovery. Now, in addition to the Cretaceous, we have the Downtron Plane. And this is a discovery that made Geopark, and this is by far the largest discovery in Colombia when you combine the entire play that is present in block 34, this is the largest discovery in Colombia in the last 12 or 15 years. It's a major amount, is over 300 million barrels discovered here. I have in the, here is the traditional Llanos play. Basically what you see is a normal fault, that is what they call antithetic fault, and this is where the accumulation normally takes place. What Geopark did, they actually challenged this concept, and they want to drill in the down deep, in the Downtron portion of the block. Normally, this is riskier because of seal, because many times you put sand against sand, but for some reason it worked really well here. It needs to understood why, but this play works fantastic, and they have these major discoveries in this area. And they have extrapolated this play into other areas with tremendous success. The other field that is important is the Capacious field. Is actually the largest field discovered in Colombia in the last 12 years. But this is an extension of the existing Chichimene structure. So this is very heavy oil, 9.3 degrees API, producing from the T2 and K1, K2 formations from the Cretaceous. Ecopetrol operates this field and made this discovery. And the final Cretaceous play that I want to mention is the Capacious field in the north of Colombia. In here, there was an existing field, but what Parex did, they drilled a northern structure that wasn't drilled, and they went deeper into the Une formation, and this added quite a bit of additional reserves to the field. Now, the other field, the last concept that I want to discover is one that I've been personally working on this for some time, and I show here the location of the heavy oil play that is located along a regional high. This is a gravity map for the area, and this is a regional high that is related to the 4 bulge of the Llanos Basin. The first discovery with Rubiales, but then we have Kifa and many other ones that have been discovered here. The common element of all these fields that have a tilted oil-water contact, which is a sort of a rarity. No, but the total discovered reserves for the heavy oil play, including some of the older fields, is 1.4 billion barrels of oil, which is a tremendous number. And this is a regional line to show the location in this case of the Rubiales field. And as you get shallower into the basin, then what is normally light oil in the typical antithetic faults, when you have the normal accumulations, then you get into Rubiales, that is a stratigraphic trap. And I'm going to show how some people believe that these stratigraphic traps, and there are many theories. This is one. This is the case of Pendare. And in this particular case, what is extremely important is the relief that existed at the time of the Carbonera deposition. So there's a major unconformity between the Paleozoic underneath and the Carbonera on top. You have an area where you have highs and lows, a series of cuestas developed by quartzitic Paleozoic rocks, very hard, and then lows by Paleozoic shales. So the Carbonera deposited filling these highs and lows. And what happened? Okay, when you have a low, you have a thicker sequence of Oligocene, Miocene sediments, and these sediments have a differential compaction. And this differential compaction, what it does, it creates a counter-regional dip by differential compaction of this thicker sequence that produces the trap. Now the question is, why is this oil-water contact tilted? And there are many theories. One, it talks about hydrodynamics and water influx, and clearly these fields have extremely active water drive. I have a different theory, and I believe that is that the present day is being uplifted. I'm going to show you a cross section. This is where the field with the tilted oil-water contact are located. This is a cross section on a digital elevation image. And what you see is a dramatic change along the Meta River. If you go from the mountain front to the Meta River, you have a typical Piedmont situation where the topography is decreasing. And after you cross the Meta River, everything is inverted. The topography is totally dramatic. When you go to the areas, it's full of terraces, and you have a topography totally different. I believe this is the an area of uplift and the location of the peripheral bulge. If we look in detail at the topography and begin to connect the water divides and relate this to some structure, let's look at this section, like the section A here. What you see is that there is like a dome, can connect a dome going like this, with Rubiales at the center, probably collapse. But all this area has been uplifted like 200-300 meters recently in the last million years or 2 million years or so. Go to the next section, B, going to Pendare, same situation, So I believe that this area has been uplifted. And what happens? Because in here, the density of the water is fairly similar to that of the heavy oil. Once you tilt the area, it will take a long time to equilibrate. And so the oil water contact is tilted because the area is being presently uplifted. If you look at the orientation of the tilted oil water contact, this is the orientation of the tilted oil water contact, which is parallel to the location of this central dome that has been uplifted. This has important implications for exploration in the area. Now, if you look at the distribution of the heavy oils in the southern part of the Llanos, then you have three areas. An area with extra heavy oil, that means oil below 10 degrees API. And these oils have been quite difficult to produce. And an area of heavy oil, where we have this field with the tilted oil water contact. And then a bit to the north, an area where you have normal discoveries with oils in the 20 degrees or so. I mean, this change in oil gravity, it happens more or less at 1100 meters of depth. And that's the point where the temperature at the reservoir begins to be below 80 degrees centigrade, and you begin the biodegradation. So I believe that in this area where the oil is heavier, in the 11 to 14 degrees API, the oil didn't have time to equilibrate, and that's why we have tilted oil water contacts. When you go to the north, is even south of the Meta River, this oil that is lighter has equilibrated as the area began to uplift. This is quite important because this Rio Meta lineament defines an area that is prospective for these heavy oil accumulation traps, and I'm not going to go into much more detail. No, but to summarize, in the Llanos Basin in the last years, you can say that there are four main plays. The heavy oil, the main Llanos play, which is the drilling in the traditional traps, or even now in the Downtron traps that Geopark is developing, and exploration in the foothills. And what has been most successful really is what I would call the main Llanos exploration in the last years, mostly driven by what you can call the Downtron Plane. In here, I made a mathematical exercise that needs to be understood as a mathematical exercise and not a prediction by any stretch of the imagination. But this is a fractal analysis, and it shows that there is still quite a bit of potential of oil to be found. The number that comes is 15 billion barrels of oil. I mean, I don't believe that number, but I just want to say that there is still, at least from the mathematical point of view, a lot of reserves to be found in the basin. As a summary, there are a total of 3.5 billion barrels of oil that were found in different basins of Colombia since 2010. This highlights the tremendous exploration potential of the country. The largest discoveries were made in the Llanos Basin that are mostly oil, and in the offshore Sinu fault belt, which is mostly gas. But there are also very important discoveries in other basins, like the lower Mag and in the middle Mag and Budamachio basins. There are several new plays that were discovered in the Llanos Basin within the last 10 years, but there are still large areas without adequate seismic coverage. Some people believe that the that the Llanos Basin has been creamed, but anyone that knows the basin, we know that there are many areas that have 2D lines that are 4-10 kilometers apart, and with that, it's impossible to define the subtle place that we want to define today. And in addition, some of the new plays are just beginning to explore, so there is tremendous potential. The other element that I want to highlight is the offshore. Now the resources are being proven. But now the next challenge is to economically develop those resources. So that is a big economic challenge, but a major promise of value for Colombia. And finally, I want to continue with my unconventional pitch that Colombia has a tremendous potential, particularly in the Middle Magdalena Basin, and this could be a game changer for the country in the next years if the above surface issues are resolved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Masalari. We invite to all of people, if you have got any question, to ask in the chat. So maybe during the presentation of Carolina Munera with the Science Ministry, maybe those questions could be answered. So now we give the stage to Carolina Munera for the presentation about the different programs that the Minister of Science have. So thank you, Dr. Masalari.
Thank you, Daniel. Buenos días para todos. A continuación, voy a presentar muy rápidamente la convocatoria 931 de 2022, convocatoria para el fortalecimiento de actores en la industria hidrocarburos, la cual estamos desarrollando en articulación con la Agencia Nacional de Hidrocarburos en el marco del Convenio Especial de Cooperación 751, suscrito con la Vicepresidencia Técnica de la Agencia. Esta convocatoria tiene como objetivo fortalecer las capacidades en investigación en las áreas relacionadas con el sector de los hidrocarburos en Colombia a través de la financiación de proyectos de investigación, innovación y desarrollo tecnológico, así como la vinculación de jóvenes investigadores e innovadores que permita la generación de un nuevo conocimiento geocientífico del sector de hidrocarburos, el aprovechamiento sostenible del recurso hidrocarburífero y el fomento de la vocación científica en estos jóvenes investigadores. La convocatoria está conformada por tres modalidades, pero nos vamos a centrar puntualmente en la modalidad número 3, que es la referente a los jóvenes investigadores e innovadores. Esta modalidad 3 está dirigida a los actores del Sistema Nacional de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación que cuenten con grupos de investigación, innovación o desarrollo tecnológico con reconocimiento vigente por parte del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación. Tendremos en cuenta la convocatoria o los resultados de la última convocatoria que se publicó en el mes de mayo de este año, la convocatoria 894. Y que estos actores estén interesados en vincular jóvenes investigadores de pregrado o jóvenes recién graduados profesionales o semilleros de investigación alguna de las líneas temáticas definidas en esta modalidad que hacen relación a las cuencas sedimentarias definidas por el mapa de tierras de la Agencia Nacional de Hidrocarburos. Cuando hablamos de actores del Sistema Nacional de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación, hacemos referencia a las instituciones de educación superior, a los centros de investigación, centros de desarrollo tecnológico, entidades gubernamentales, empresas, todas que cuenten con grupos de investigación. Frente a las líneas temáticas que vamos a manejar, tenemos 23 cuencas sedimentarias que fueron definidas por el mapa de tierras de la Agencia Nacional de Hidrocarburos, donde contamos con cuencas emergentes, cuencas fronteras y cuencas maduras, en el marco de las cuales se desarrollarán propuestas de investigación con la vinculación de estos jóvenes investigadores e innovadores. Estas líneas temáticas lo que nos permiten es la generación de un nuevo conocimiento geocientífico en las cuencas mencionadas. Se van a otorgar 5 puntos adicionales en el proceso de evaluación a aquellas propuestas que estén relacionadas con las cuencas frontera y se debe tener en cuenta que para el caso de las propuestas que estén relacionadas con cuencas maduras, estas deberán estar orientadas a nuevos paradigmas y que sean novedosas frente al contenido y frente a la temática que van a desarrollar. Entrando en materia de nuestros jóvenes investigadores e innovadores, les contamos que estos jóvenes pertenecen a 3 categorías. Uno son los estudiantes de pregrado, que serán estudiantes que hayan cursado al menos el 70% de su pregrado, quienes se vincularán bajo la modalidad de beca pasantía. Tenemos los profesionales recién graduados, que son estudiantes que se graduaron dentro de los últimos 3 años, que hayan obtenido máximo 3 años de haber obtenido su título profesional, y los semilleros de investigación, que son estudiantes de pregrado que se encuentran cursando 4º semestre en adelante. En todos los casos, los jóvenes investigadores de pregrado, semilleros y profesionales deberán tener formación en geociencias, geología, ingeniería de petróleos, ingeniería geológica o programas afines relacionados con las disciplinas mencionadas. Esta modalidad 3 del programa Jóvenes Investigadores en la convocatoria 931, a su vez está conformado por 3 mecanismos, donde se define el tipo de participación según el tipo de joven que se va a vincular. La número 1 está orientada a jóvenes de pregrado y jóvenes profesionales, quienes se vincularán por 12 meses a través del mecanismo de beca pasantía en el marco de un proyecto de investigación que esté relacionado con alguna de las líneas temáticas mencionadas. El número 2 está relacionado a estudiantes de pregrado que vayan a presentar su trabajo de grado, el cual será financiado y se otorgará un recurso de manutención a este joven de pregrado para el desarrollo de su trabajo de grado. Y el número 3 está orientado a los semilleros de investigación, que son estudiantes de pregrado que han cursado 4º semestre en adelante. Estos semilleros deberán estar conformados por mínimo 3 jóvenes y máximo 15 jóvenes, quienes se vincularán por 12 meses al semillero de investigación en un grupo de investigación con una propuesta. ¿Qué perfil deben tener estos jóvenes? En todos los casos, para los jóvenes de pregrado, profesionales y semilleros, vamos a tener un componente de enfoque diferencial, el cual no es inhabilitante ni es obligatorio, es opcional, donde permitiremos la participación de jóvenes que sean víctimas del conflicto armado, que sean población afrocolombiana, palenquera, rom, indígena, para que estos jóvenes tengan oportunidades de participar en estos proyectos y obtendrán una puntuación adicional en el componente de evaluación. Todos los jóvenes investigadores deberán tener en cuenta el siguiente perfil, el cual es obligatorio. Deberán tener una edad máxima de 28 años cumplidos al 31 de diciembre del año 2022. Para esto deberán presentar su cédula de ciudadanía, fotocopia de la misma, ampliada por ambas caras para poder validar este requisito. Deberán presentar deberán tener un promedio académico del pregrado de mínimo 3,8. Para el caso de los jóvenes de pregrado, el promedio que han obtenido hasta ese momento, y para el caso de los jóvenes profesionales, el obtenido durante toda su carrera. Que deben adjuntar un certificado o documento equivalente expedido por la institución de educación superior donde se encuentran vinculados o de donde fueron egresados, donde se evidencie que cuentan con este promedio académico en una escala de 0 a 5. Frente al estado académico, para el caso de los semilleros de investigación, deberán adjuntar un certificado o documento equivalente expedido por la institución de educación superior donde se encuentra vinculado, donde evidenciemos en qué semestre se encuentra cursando. Para los estudiantes de pregrado, un certificado o documento equivalente donde podamos evidenciar que ha cursado al menos el 70% de los créditos académicos del pregrado. Y para el caso de los jóvenes profesionales, copia del diploma o acta de grado, donde evidenciemos que cuenta con su título profesional del pregrado, o si culminó materias y tiene pendiente su ceremonia de grado, un certificado donde indique que ha culminado materias y que se encuentra pendiente es de su ceremonia de grado. Frente a la financiación para esta modalidad de la convocatoria 931, se cuenta con 4.500 millones de pesos disponibles para financiar el 100% de las becas pasantía o de los trabajos de grado según corresponda. ¿Qué es importante tener en cuenta? Las instituciones que presentan y avalan a los jóvenes investigadores deberán garantizar que los proyectos marco en el cual se van a vincular estos jóvenes investigadores cuentan con un tiempo de ejecución de al menos 12 meses y con un músculo financiero para la ejecución de las propuestas, toda vez que estos jóvenes investigadores serán vinculados a esos proyectos en el marco de un plan de actividades y los recursos que estamos otorgando en esta modalidad número 3 corresponden únicamente al joven investigador. Las entidades asimismo deberán aportar una contrapartida en especie o dinero para el fortalecimiento de una segunda lengua y para la divulgación de los resultados obtenidos de esta convocatoria. Rápidamente, para el mecanismo número 1 de esta modalidad, que son los jóvenes profesionales y de pregrado, para los jóvenes profesionales se cuenta con una disponibilidad de recursos de 36 millones de pesos para financiar el 100% de los recursos con pagos mensuales de 3 millones por 12 meses. Y para el joven de pregrado, una disponibilidad de 18 millones de pesos con pagos mensuales de 1.500.000 por 12 meses. Para el caso número 2, que son los jóvenes de pregrado que van a presentar su trabajo de grado, se cuenta con una disponibilidad de recursos por entre 5 y 10 millones de pesos que tendrán una destinación específica en los rubros que se señalan en los términos de referencia, dentro de los cuales tenemos salidas de campo, material bibliográfico, servicios técnicos, pruebas de laboratorio, publicaciones, entre otros. Y adicionalmente a ese joven de pregrado se le va a otorgar un valor o un reconocimiento de 18 millones de pesos con pagos mensuales de 1.500.000 como una manutención por 12 meses para el desarrollo del trabajo de grado. Y finalmente, en el número 3, referente a la creación o fortalecimiento de los semilleros de investigación, se van a otorgar entre 15 hasta 30 millones de pesos, lo cual va a variar según el número de jóvenes integrantes del semillero de investigación. Para aquellos semilleros en los cuales estén conformados por 3 jóvenes investigadores, se otorgarán 15 millones de pesos. Hasta 4 jóvenes, 20 millones de pesos, hasta 5 jóvenes, 25 millones de pesos, y entre 6 y 15 jóvenes, 30 millones de pesos, los cuales van a ser objeto de evaluación. Finalmente, las propuestas que se presenten en el marco de esta modalidad número 3 serán sujetas de un proceso de verificación de requisitos donde se tendrán en cuenta el perfil de los jóvenes investigadores, como se señaló anteriormente, así como el plan de actividades presentado, que tenga coherencia y relación con las actividades y los resultados esperados, y en el caso de los trabajos de grado, la pertinencia y coherencia del mismo. Aquellas propuestas que cumplan con la totalidad de los requisitos serán sometidas a un proceso de evaluación por pares evaluadores externos, donde vamos a revisar en todos los casos la claridad, coherencia y pertinencia de la propuesta del joven investigador. Se va a tener en cuenta en el criterio número 1 y 2, o modalidad 1 y 2, el promedio académico del joven investigador, la experiencia en investigación, si ha tenido, la categoría del grupo de investigación y el reconocimiento y trayectoria del tutor que estará acompañando a este joven investigador. Y finalmente, en el numeral 3, correspondiente a los semilleros de investigación, se revisará la propuesta que se presente de ese semillero, la categoría del grupo de investigación, el reconocimiento y trayectoria del joven investigador. La convocatoria fue abierta el 24 de junio y estará disponible hasta el 19 de agosto a las 3:30 de la tarde, hora Colombia. Las personas interesadas en participar podrán consultar los términos de referencia en la página web del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación a través del link Oferta Institucional o la pueden buscar por convocatoria 931. Todas las consultas, peticiones, quejas y reclamos que se tengan al respecto de esta convocatoria podrán ser tramitadas a través del canal de peticiones, quejas y reclamos del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación disponible en la página web. Y esta misma información se encuentra disponible en los términos de referencia señalados. Muchas gracias.
Carolina, muchas gracias a ti. Y ahora damos paso a la parte de Q&A. Hay unas preguntas bastante interesantes pues, para el doctor Carlos Maslari. Y de igual manera, pues recordarles a todos que dentro de hoy en 8 tendremos pues la presentación del doctor Alberto García de la Drummond, Exploration in Natural Fracture Reservoirs in the Cesar Rancheria Basin. So, doctor Maslari, tenemos una pregunta de Andrés Mesa. Dice, muy interesante la presentación. Lo que quería preguntar es, ¿qué se recomendaría a la NH desde su perspectiva para atraer nuevas operadoras? Ya que explorando activamente o firmando nuevos bloques, tenemos solamente 5 o 6 en los últimos tiempos.
Daniel, could we maybe jump into English again, please?
Yep, sure.
Could you repeat the question in English, please? Thanks.
Yep, no worries. So what Andres wanted to ask is like, what would you recommend to the ANH in order to make attractive to new operator companies? Because the last rounds that we have had, we only have 5 to 6 players in the last times.
Okay, thank you, Andres. It's a very interesting question, but I think all this needs to be taken into a global context. I mean, today there are very few companies doing exploration anywhere in the world. It's not a Colombian problem, it's a worldwide problem. I mean, in the last few days, many companies are actually, many of the large companies are actually getting away from exploration. So, you know, in the bigger context, I believe that it's not a Colombian problem, it's a worldwide problem. But specific for Colombia, there are some issues that are affecting the exploration. Of course, is the time it takes many of the environmental licensing, you know, I know that there are some fields that have problems in obtaining environmental licenses. It's a process that takes sometimes some time. There are sometimes difficulties, local difficulties with some of the communities, etc. And really what can be done is to help the companies that are bringing the resources to do the exploration in the process. But I believe that also these workshops or all these sharing the knowledge of these basins with the operators, that the work that ANH is doing is helping a long way to attract the operators. I believe that once the oil price continues to be at this level for a little bit longer, there will be a tremendous interest in Colombia again.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Dr. Maslari. We got a last question for you that's quite interesting by Jorge Toro Lava. He says, firstly, thanks, Dr. Maslari, for your high impact detailed conference. The question, if considering the prolific oil production in the Oriente Basin, Ecuador, mainly coming from the classic Cretaceous rock, why Colombia? Why do you think Colombia has limited discoveries in the Putumayo Basin?
Okay, yes, a very interesting question. It's interesting because really the discoveries in that basin, the first discovery was the Orito field that is in Colombia, was done by Texaco, and after the discovery of Orito, is the interest was extended to Ecuador. So the story began the other way around, first in Colombia, then in Ecuador. But having said that, as I fully agree, just across the border, you have this giant Chuchufín, the Libertador, Sacha, all these mega fields. And I think could be a geologic and could be a historical situation. I mean, there is a situation that in the last years, the Putumayo Basin had, it was much more difficult to operate than in Ecuador for a situation of a public order, you know, so it was easier to operate and conduct activity in Ecuador than Colombia. But also it may be a geologic situation. I mean, the geology goes across the border, it's the same one, but I wonder if the main kitchen is a bit further south, and I'm not sure, you know, but it looks like it's a bit further south. And actually, I don't know if in Putumayo you have the structures. There are large portion of the basin that don't have enough seismic. I mean, if there would have been big structures, they would have seen, but but there are some large areas that, because of the situation that I mentioned before, that don't have enough seismic information. And that's why I said when in the presentation that the Putumayo is an area that, as more activity can be conducted, has a lot of potential. So it's possible that this is the same large discoveries of Oriente could extend here. It just requires more exploration.
Thank you very much. There's a last question, and he says by Julian Hurtado. Carlos, a question. Do you think the carbon capture storage, CCS, could be just a relevant topic that we could be prepared in the next years just for Latin America, or do you reckon that maybe this topic is only for Europe and the North Sea?
Well, first of all, I'm not an expert in the topic, so I can comment what I think in particular. Of course, this is something that is relevant worldwide, but it has much more impact, at least at the society level in Europe. Yeah, it's something that will be important in Colombia, because at the end of the day, we're all connected. I mean, this is one world, and the carbon, the CO2 influence on the climate operates everywhere. So yeah, it's something that eventually needs to be put more focus, and eventually will happen in Colombia as well. But I really think that many of our Latin American countries, we have a lot of problems. I mean, we need to feed the people. We have economies that are going serious turmoil, and the other issue is extremely important. But at the same time, we need to prioritize. But yes, to summarize, yes, it's something that will need to be done.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Maselari, for the presentation, for that, how important it is to summarize the whole petroleum systems of the different basins, and beyond that, give new perspective to these new ideas. So from the ANH, we would like to thank you very much for this presentation. As well, we'd like to thank Carolina for the presentation about the different projects that we are carrying out with the Science Ministry, and to all of the attendees. So see you next week to the exploration in natural fracture reservoirs into the Cesar-Rancheria Basin by Dr. Alberto Garcia from the Drummond Company. So thank you very much. And remember that next week, we will have as well into the July 29, our Pacific workshop that will be given in person and remotely if you're interested in it. Those are the different talks that will be given along the day. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias por la invitación.
Igualmente, muchas gracias.